I am Dr. Teresa Johnson, a board member of the South Florida Community Reinvestment Alliance, and I'm so happy and pleased that you have taken the time to be with us today. I have the distinct pleasure to introduce our next speaker. And Cornell asked me to do it as a result that I am currently running for office as well here in Palm Beach County. And so I am definitely looking forward to what Mr. Norwood is going to share with us. Christopher Norwood, JD, is a principal of the Norwood Consulting Group, founded in 2002 as a resource for public, private, and nonprofit institutions engaged in community building, offering services to support nonprofit management, governance training, program design, political consulting, community advocacy, and public policy analysis. He is a graduate of Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia, where he studied social work and community organization. Mr. Norwood pursued his master's of public administration at Cornell University's Institute for Public Affairs and his Juris Doctorate from St. Thomas University School of Law, where he served as president of the Catholic Students Lawyers Guild. Mr. Norwood is a community organizer, passionately involved, but strategically focused. Norwood serves his community in several ways as a vice president of Miami-Dade County Public Schools Audit and Budget Advisory Committee, secretary of the Our Little Ones Child Care Center, board of directors, national treasurer of the National Hampton Alumni Association, Inc., as well as several other boards that further his personal mission to serve. Norwood is also the founder of Hampton Art Lovers, operator of the historic Ward Rooming House Gallery, an avid art collector that serves on the editorial board of the International Review of African American Art, founded in 1976, published by the Hampton University Museum, which is the oldest African American museum and art museum in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Chris Norwood.
Thank you very much, Dr. Johnson. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
That was an amazing introduction through an amazing voice. Thank you. Thank you again. Greetings to all. It is a beautiful South Florida morning, and one in which we have the opportunity to further our professional development around the issues and mission of this organization that's producing this summit. I'm so happy that the summit organizers decided to have a session that focuses on lessons about how to run for office, which says a lot about the importance that this organization places on good people who have their hearts in the right place for their community, to not only serve their community through the organizations that they have committed themselves to, but also to serve their community by running for office and being engaged in either public policy as a legislator or public policy as a executive. And so with that being said, I'm going to share my thoughts on what it takes to run for office. I've been involved in politics and government since I was in high school, to be quite honest. When I went to college, I learned the importance of public policy because I was a recipient of Social Security benefits. And because of my father passing away, as well as my mother passed away before I finished high school, I received Social Security benefits. And that public policy allowed for you to receive dollars while you are up to the age of 18. And soon after I started college, I became aware that there used to be a time where those benefits extended while you were in college. And those benefits, although I was told that when I was in high school, that those rules had changed. And that was the first time that I realized, really honestly, what public policy was and how it changes based upon who's in governance, and for the better or for the worse. But later on, while I was in college, I worked for the City of Hampton Youth Services Commission. And again, I learned the power that government can play in advocating for youth and families and youth development. I went on to work for the City of Newark during the summer before I started graduate school. And I worked for a legislator there, the oldest serving legislator in Newark, New Jersey, my hometown. His name was Donald Tucker. And he taught me a lot about running for office. He himself was a part of SNCC. And one of the first things he did was, here I am, a legislative aide in the largest city in Newark, New Jersey, on my way to Cornell University, thinking I'm, the best thing smoking, at 21, 22. You couldn't tell me nothing. And he put me in front of City Hall with 3 ironing boards, a loudspeaker, and 3 clipboards. And he told me that I had to deliver to him every day 100 voter registrations in front of City Hall. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm about to go to graduate school to study public policy. I'm sitting here working for a very powerful city councilman, a councilman at large. I'm about to learn all about zoning and garbage and police and fire. And here I am with clipboard and 3 ironing boards. And it was a lesson that he taught me from his experiences traveling in the Deep South during the 1960s to register voters, that, they would go down there with ironing boards because they were makeshift desks. And having to engage people at that age and talk to them, about why they should register to vote, it required me to understand why I was voting. And it required me to develop some game, to be quite honest, because you had to have, this is Newark, New Jersey. You people weren't just running up to register. So it taught me some valuable lessons. And from there, I worked on his campaigns over the years and worked for him during the summers. He was a state legislator as well. Back then, you used to be able to do both at the same time in New Jersey, which is quite interesting. But then I moved down here for law school and began to get involved in campaigns, and I've worked on several local campaigns, state elections, developed a practice in judicial campaigns, and so here we are, and here I am in front of you today. And so I just want to give that brief background so that you can understand contextually where I'm coming from. I have a presentation prepared, and it's merely just to provide some visuals and to give some basic topics about what I'm going to discuss. So my name is Christopher Norwood again. These are strategies to improve our community through public service, and I believe running for office is a very valuable tool in that will bag. Let's see here. I'm sorry, I didn't start from the beginning. Let me get it back to the beginning. Here we go. All right. So the field of dreams. This is the topic of this section, and I call it field of dreams because we're talking about the field. And when I say field, I mean how many votes does it take to win? These are questions when you decide to run for office and you've made that commitment. Remember, this is a how-to, and so this is a how-to session. So I'm assuming you're in the game to run for a particular seat or a particular executive position, and or judge or what have you. you have to determine how many votes does it take to win. And so this is fairly easy to accomplish. Your supervisor of elections has a historical record of all the elections for every seat going back for a very long time. So you can look at, the best rule of thumb is to look at the past 5 elections in a particular seat that you're running for, at least 4, and see what the trends are. How many votes did it take for a particular person to win that seat? That information is typically free. Sometimes you may have to pay for the paper, for the supervisor of elections to download it. There are other ways to do it through consultants as well, but at the end of the day, you can walk to the supervisor of elections and get all of that information, or to the clerk at a particular city hall that you're inquiring this information about. Where will these votes come from, and how will you find them? Another very important question. When you run, understanding the field is the basic thing. You need to know where the voters are, who are the voters, and that is a process, again, that you can pretty much receive from your local supervisor of election. If you want to go that route, typically a good political consultant will have all of this information readily available for most elections in the areas in which they operate. Also, all of this is important to develop a field plan, because you have to, a campaign is a plan of action to achieve a goal. And you're campaigning to achieve that goal, which is to ultimately win. But even if you don't win, is to move the needle towards the issues that you hold dear in your community. And so this requires a field plan, and all of this information about where the voters are, how many votes you need, and all of these things are part of that field plan. Defining your base. As a candidate for office, you should have a base of support. And what does that mean? What that means is, if you live in one section of town and you've been living there for however many years you've been living there, the assumption is that that is your base. This is where people know you. This is where your activity has probably been focused on. And so, from that base, you should build your campaign and build out and improve your base and include other communities as you build out your outreach and letting people know who you are and why you're running for office. Your base can also be a particular issue. Maybe you're a member of a home association and you've built relationships through that and on issues of, the crime watch or issues relating to property taxes. Then other home associations in your city may know who you are because you've engaged them. Or even if you haven't, when you're active in a home association, other people who are involved in home associations are closely aligned with you. So that could be your base or be one of your bases. But the important thing is for you to define what your base is. You got to start from somewhere. And so defining who are your relationships, whatever they are, whether it's organizational or issue based, that becomes the definition of your base. And you've heard this term before. That base can mean something that has to do with a political party. It can mean all the things that I just described to you as well, and all of the above. And the more bases you have, the better. Target voters. The key word. Oh, kiwi. I wish I had some kiwi. The key word is voters, not people, not places or things. Having a targeted plan to target voters is very important because so often during the course of a campaign, you can lose focus that at the end of it all, your goal is to have more votes than the other person or the other people. That is the goal. And so therefore, every action that you do, every expenditure that you do, the question you should be asking is this helping me reach the target voters? And you have to define the target voters. One of the best ways to define target voters is to actually target the voters, which is the people who actually vote. The people who actually vote. And for people who come from backgrounds in community advocacy, sometimes that's hard because we feel as though we're not going to throw away nobody. You know, we're not going to disregard nobody. We're going to serve everybody. And that mindset is admirable. But when you're running a campaign in Dade County or Broward County, Palm Beach County, in a local election, it's going to be less than 20%, and that's 20% is a high number. But less than 20% of the actual registered voters are actually going to go to the poll. And if you're operating in a community of poverty, it could even be worse sometimes. And so routinely in Dade County, in a local election, when I say local election, what I'm saying is that especially a primary election where a lot of local elections are had, these are not national presidential elections where 70% of the registered voters are going out to vote and everything is on TV and there's ads on every channel leading up to the election. Everybody's aware. That happens every 4 years in November, okay? That's the Super Bowl, okay? We're talking about the high school. We're not even talking about the high school football game. We're talking about the Pee Wee Church League. You know, those are the people who vote in the elections that actually matter the most, if you can believe that. But it's true. And so therefore, those voters are the people that you target. And again, it's kind of hard for people who are involved in community organizations to really do that, but you have to because there's limited resources. And why is this important? This is important because if you're targeting voters and you're targeting communication to voters and you have $100 to spend, are you going to spend $100 sending things to people who 80% probability are not going to vote? You're not going to do that. You know, what you're going to do is you're going to send your communications and you're going to spend your dollar to have maximum impact. And so therefore, if I know for sure that these particular voters are going to the poll, my message should be tailored to the people who are actually going to make the decision to vote me in or not. And you can spend some of your money, I guess, if you like, to try to build a base of target voters, meaning getting people who would not normally go vote to vote. But I'm going to tell you, based upon experience, it's not worth the money. If you are able to do those things, that's great, but that's not where the majority of your resources should be focused on. It's just not realistic. And so when I say target voters, I'm not talking about people. Okay, I'm not talking about registered voters. I'm not talking about places, places you may go that, there's a lot of people, but it's not voter rich, And so when you have these things actually in your brain about target voters, it should define how you move as the campaign moves along, the types of events that you go to as well. So, messaging and communications, which is the second portion of the second topic in how to run for office. Messaging ensures that everyone involved with the campaign who needs to communicate something with the voter can do it with a common set of messages and a common understanding of what the voter should hear from them. Messaging is an essential ingredient for a successful campaign. I define this way because, it's not just about the communication that you send out, or in an ad, in a mailer, what you put on your website. It's not just about that. It's about how anybody involved with your campaign communicates about your campaign. And so it needs to be concise. People need to know, you should develop a message that is as simple as possible, but that when you need to discuss it and further, you can go wherever you need to go with it. But your cousin around the corner who's married to the deacon at the church, when someone asks him about who, John Samuels is, who's running for city council, he needs to be able to tell them very quickly, well, he stands for this, this, and this, or there's some sort of message or some sort of branding that easily comports to a quick synopsis of who this person is, or defines who they are. Oh, he or she is a teacher and they believe in X. It's just something has to comport to something that's very compact, so that anybody and everybody can easily communicate it. And then when it comes to real communications, you can get broader and more complicated, but it needs to be as small and as big as, there needs to be everything in between, but clearly the initial messaging needs to be very concise. The communication plan must be developed with clearly defined key messages, audiences, and strategies for reaching those audiences, i.e. direct mail, social media, and advertisements. In defining a message, you have to define who you are. You have to define what it is and why. And this is something that would have happened way before, but in defining your message, you wrap that message around who you are as a person. Why are you running for office? And when someone says, why are you running for office, it shouldn't change. It shouldn't change. Your response should never change, because you want people, and it may sound somewhat difficult, but the best campaigns have a very disciplined communication. And so that if somebody on one part of town meets you at a parade and another person meets you at the supermarket, they're essentially hearing the same thing. It can be very compelling. And sometimes for the audience, for the person saying it, can get a little bit boring. But I would hope that you would imagine that Las Vegas singer with that one-hit wonder who keeps singing that same song, but is making money all over the world, and it's very, just think of that the discipline of your message is very important, so that when someone meets you one place and they meet you and those two people meet each other, they actually are thinking about the same things. And that's very, very important. The third topic I want to discuss, and I'm going to leave more than enough time for questions, and I'm hoping that that is where the bulk of our discussion can reside. The third topic is manage the dream. Fundraising. Fundraising. And then, hold on, let me go back to the topic. Votes matter, and they're the most important thing in an election. Money doesn't win elections, votes do. But money sure does help. And this is important to know, that raising money is a fact of life when you're running for office. But more importantly, building a realistic budget, crafting a finance plan, and raising money, these are the rubrics to fundraising that no matter what it is that you are raising, these are the skills that are required. But having a realistic budget is what allows for planning. And why is this important? This is important because if I know going into the campaign that I have $100, then I can use that $100 and plan for the next 4 months. You know, if I have $100 during the last 2 weeks of a campaign, I mean, it's that $100 for me is like $10, you know, at that moment in time. If I have $100 and I know I got $100, I can plan a campaign and build a movement, you know, and I'm using $100, you know, very fictitiously. But the point is that, you know, have a realistic budget. I always tell candidates, you know, you have your Cadillac budget, and then, you know, you got your Dodge Dart budget, you know, and the Cadillac budget is not going to help somebody like me, you know. The realistic budget is what I'm going to go by, because that's what is required in the management and planning of a campaign, because timing is important. You know, when you do things is important, because we know going into a campaign that, you know, the majority of voters are not, and this is even pre-COVID, the majority of voters were not going to vote on election day. The majority of voters were voting absentee, and then early voting. And so we know early voting happens 2 weeks before an election generally, and we know absentee ballots are distributed out to those who requested, you know, maybe a month before then. And so knowing that and communicating with people when they are voting is very important. It's just logical. You know, if I'm spending money 3 days before a campaign, before an election, well, 80% of the people have already voted, you know? And so having money and knowing that you have it so that you can plan, even if it's not a lot of money, is very important, but especially if you're targeting the people who are actually going to vote. And so sometimes when we talk about campaigns, people think they have to raise a whole lot of money, and depending upon, you know, what office you're running for, you know, that level changes tremendously. But a lot of times it's not always about the money that you raise or the dollar amount. It's about going into the campaign having a realistic budget plan. You know, if your opponent is raising, or typically, you know, that's, again, you can look at the research from the supervisor of elections to determine how much money people raised for your same seat over the last 4 or 5 elections. Again, that is very important as you are developing your campaign plan, which I'll get to shortly. But you can look at and see how much people have raised in order to win a seat. Let's assume someone had raised $100,000 for a seat. Well, you know, what I would say is, if I had $50,000 and I knew I had it, and I knew that it was realistic, and I can then spend money as I go along with that in mind, that, to me, that's worth just as much as 100,000, and not knowing when I'm getting it and when I'm spending it, because I don't know when I'm getting it. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, having that realistic budget, being honest with yourself, you know, is really what's very important, because if more money comes in, then the thing that I was going to do 2 of, I'll do 3 of. You know, if I was going to, you know, get, you know, pay for a couple of canvassers, now I'm doing 4 canvassers. You know, if I was going to get 1 ad in the paper, I'm doing 2 ads in the paper. So it's really about planning. That fundraising, being realistic about your fundraising, allows someone who is managing your campaign, whether it's a paid consultant or even yourself, it allows you to have a very tight campaign plan that you can actually implement, because the dollars are there, whatever the dollars are. So the last topic I want to talk about is management. Every campaign needs a plan to win. Candidates must learn how to stay focused on the goal that matters, winning. And coordinating all aspects of the campaign is usually the job of a manager, but it doesn't need to be. So let me start with the plan. You need a plan, whether it's a fundraising plan, a campaign plan, or a field plan. All of that is all those things fold into generally a campaign plan, and you need that. Um, so often people engage in campaigns and they never really have a written down plan. And sometimes people get lucky and they win, or and it's cool. But you really should have a plan that you can implement. And I tell you why. Um, Most people who run for office are working. They're working people, you know. Although you may take off towards the end of a campaign, which I would suggest, but the more planning you do, the more you can continue on with your life of raising your kids, or going to work every day. You know, when you have a real campaign plan, you have a certain confidence as well, because things are getting done and when they're getting done. Um, when you have a real campaign plan, you know what you have to do to reach whatever your goals are. Um, the smaller goals that get you into that victory circle. Hey, I got to walk and knock on 100 doors, today, and that 3 days before you need to do it. And so you can just continue to operate your life in a way that can be as less disruptive to all the other things that's going on. um, uh, the the other thing I would like to talk about is, what is winning. you know um, Winning a campaign is very important, obviously, because you want to be elected, but sometimes you invest this time into this process so that you can win, or B, position yourself in a way that you can win an election eventually. Or C, there's something going on in your community that no one is really squarely dealing with. And so by running for office, you can clearly make that issue center stage, at least for that period of time. And so often, if you're very compelling, the other candidates will also have to respond to it. Or the winning candidate will have to engage that issue because the voters have now said that this is important. So you can impact elections by not winning as well. I mean, you can impact public policy by not winning. If we think on a national scale, some people who lost elections on a national scale over the past few years, someone like a Bernie Sanders. Bernie lost an election, but did he impact the debate? Did he? Yes, absolutely. Were the policies that he was pushing became a part of the mainstream platform of the Democratic Party? Absolutely, they did. Uh, and so on and so forth. So, or if you think of local elections or state elections, people who lost, you can still impact public policy even in defeat. But that's enough of defeat. But anyway, another aspect of management, which is very important, is compliance. As all of us know who work in and work for community-based organizations, who deal with funders, who deal with state funding and things of that nature, you also always have to be very cognizant of compliance. And so typically that is a role of a manager or someone in a management position, because there are many rules and many laws relating to campaigns. And sometimes even the brightest people make mistakes because this is all new to them. This has to do with when your finance reports are due. There's a time frame for that. You have to be very well aware of that, because they change as the campaign goes on in many jurisdictions, they change. So like if you're running for state office, it might be every month and then it goes to every 2 weeks, you know what I'm saying? And if you don't know that, you're late and that doesn't look good, and there are penalties. There are rules about how you advertise. There are rules about how you spend your money, and the amount of the types of expenditures that you can you can make. There are rules about cash payments for things. There's all sorts of different compliance rules around campaigns that good people who are really trying to do the right thing can sometimes mess that up. And so that's a role of management of a campaign, or either a manager or someone who is in that capacity. But you have to have your eye on compliance, and it doesn't look good in the news when you're running for office and you're not abiding by the rules of running for office. So the assumption is, if you can't abide by the rules of running for office, why should anyone vote for you? So the other thing is consultants. If you're running a sophisticated campaign, and when I say sophisticated campaign, I mean most campaigns for local office may not require consultants, you know what I mean? Because it's a small group of voters. It's not a complicated campaign. You still need to do all the things that I described previously, but you may have the resource to hire someone to help manage that process for you. But I know that a lot of times people who are interested in campaigns, they hear these terms consultants. Well, a consultant just means someone who is focused on a specific area of your campaign, or a specific interest group of voters. They could be somebody who focuses on your website. Technically, that's a consultant, because they're being paid to do a particular purpose. They're not employees of the campaign. You're paying them a fee for service, and so they are. You can call them, because you call them whatever you want, but I would just call them consultants. And then there are people who are helping you with a specific interest group of voters, like someone who knows a particular community of voters, someone who knows how to engage that community. That is another type of political consultant. And then you may have someone who's your media consultant. You may have someone who is managing your canvassers, your field team, if you have that. Even if you don't have these people in a paid position, if it's a local election, you should still be thinking in these terms. And I always say in a campaign, volunteers are great until it's time to do something and they're just a volunteer. I don't care what type of campaign you have, big or small. It's always great when you have somebody that you pay to do something. Someone that, even if it's not a lot, I'm not talking about thousands and thousands of dollars, but that level of accountability, when it's time to walk that area and you have somebody that walk with you, to canvass a community, it's always great when that person is someone who you're paying, because they're going to show up and be there for you. And as much as people have beautiful families and everyone says, oh, I'm going to help you and all these sort of things and all of that. Oh, but when Saturday morning comes at 7:00, they're not there. And, they come at 10, 11, and you're happy that they're there. But it's always good to have like somebody, even if it's a older person, maybe it's somebody who can't find a job, and that whatever you're paying for them means something, and they believe in you, of course, But I would always suggest that you have somebody, even if you're just paying them, $100 for the week, somebody who is accountable to that $100. With that being said, I hope you liked my newspaper presentation on how to run for office. If anybody can read the little fine print in some of these little things, I might give you a gift from my gallery because I got some funny little things in there. Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson, for allowing me and for that wonderful introduction. And I look forward to any questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris, for that packed presentation. I will tell you, I took some nuggets away from it as well. We do have a few questions in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and read those out. The first one is from Stabelis Gomez. I hope I pronounced that correctly. It says, what are some different tools you would suggest for someone to use in their campaign?
I would say and I don't know, I'm going to speak from a pre-COVID perspective. Because I think eventually you're going to get back to normal by 2022 when, you know, the new cycle, the new regular cycle, you know, there are local elections happening around, but it's hard for me to imagine some of these things during a COVID environment. But the tools that I would say is if you're running for office, the best thing you can do is get a good voter list, the most recent voter list, and focus on what we call the 3 and 4 rated voters. And the 3 and 4 rated voters is you get a list for the community in which you're running of the all the voters that have voted in the last 4 elections for your election. Not the last 4 presidential elections, the last 4 gubernatorial elections, none of that. The last 4 elections for the seat that you're running for. And we rate those voters 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. And what that means is that a 4-rated voter voted in the past 4 elections in your area. They voted in all 4 elections. A 3-rated voter would be somebody that voted in all 3 elections for the seat in which you're running for. That means that these people are coming to vote no matter what. 3s and 4s, 1s or 2s, you know, depending on how you want to operate your campaign, perhaps you might do something with them or not. Another way to rate the voters is a much broader way, is also to rate them on the last 4 elections, period, no matter what type of election it was. So that's another way to do it. And I think that is a good way to do it as well. That's probably the best way to do it. I just get so into the numbers. I just want to know who's voting for this election. But if you find people, and I would probably move to 5 elections when you start talking about that, because the last 5 elections could extend maybe 6, 7 years, you know, because there's so many different elections, the primaries every 2 years and the generals every 2 years. That's 4 elections right there in a 2-year period. And so, you know, I might move to 5 elections just to get a broader base. And once you have those targets, once you identify who is actually voting, there's nothing that replaces knocking on their doors. Now, people say that they're knocking on doors. You hear that stated by people in the media, or you talk to people about, oh, I'm knocking on doors. No, they're not knocking on doors. It's very rare that people who are running for office really put together a real canvassing operation where they are knocking on doors. It's very rare, you know. And of course, anybody, you know, running for president, Donald Trump didn't knock on no doors. Neither did Joe Biden, not a single one. Okay, not unless CNN, Fox News was there with him, you know. But I will tell you this, what I've learned over my years of working on campaigns and what I've advised clients that I've worked with and friends of mine that I've worked with, man, there's nothing that beats when you knock on that door and you hear what people have to say. It makes you a better candidate. It's not a chore. It's what you have signed up for. If you're not willing to go out there and knock on someone's door and canvass a neighborhood, then I would question why you're running for office. I would question that. You know, if you're not going to go out there and walk around in your flats and walk and go into to these people's homes and say, hey, I'm, John Samuels, and I'm running for city council, and let me tell you why. If you're not willing to do that, then I don't think you really should be running for office. And it makes you a better politician. It makes you a better candidate, because now you think you know why you're running for office, but once you start talking to people, you start hearing things differently. And now when you do that enough, you start sounding like them. And that means that when you start sounding like them, then now when they hear you talk, they know you sound like them. And so that you want people in office that understand the issues, that really know the nuances of what's happening in their community. They really want people who know the nuances of what's happening, but also have a skill set to fix it. And so I would say a big pointer for someone is to get that voter list and knock on doors. And then you can figure out a whole lot just by doing that. A lot of other things just come with it. Yes,
absolutely. And Chris, if I can add to it, I think I shared that I am running for office here in my town. And I will tell you, I've knocked on over 300 doors. And what you just said is spot on. When you start hearing the concerns from the people, you do start sounding like them. And there's nothing more genuine than a face-to-face encounter with a voter. There's nothing more genuine, and I absolutely love it. That is the strongest component of my campaign, is my canvassing every single Saturday. And I reached into my friends, my relatives, my National Association of 100 Black Women, my church, my community. I pull volunteers from every single sector that I have. But yes, absolutely, knocking on doors, you can't replace it with anything. And so the first question, go ahead.
Hold on, let's just follow up. This is important also because, again, it's a campaign, right? It's a campaign. There's supposed to be action. There's supposed to be buildup. When you're walking and you're able to time things correctly, you're walking a district, walking an area, and 2 weeks later, they get something in the mail from you. Or a month later, they get something in the mail from you. Now that connectivity is being reinforced. You don't send mail trying to convey to somebody why they should vote for you. I send mail because my can has knocked on your door. I'm just reminding you. It's a totally different kind of situation when you're sending mail to someone who you actually met. And they see your face again and you remind them, hey, remember me? So yes, it's all a part of that plan. And so yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Johnson.
Awesome. The second part of that first question reads, I have found a setback to running as a young individual is that I am not taken seriously by some older individuals. What is your experience with this, and how can I get through to older individuals in regards to messaging?
So what I would say to a young person running for office, especially a local office, your voters are going to be older, and your messages may be feeding into something that they just can't identify with. And so as a part of your repertoire, you have to figure out what's happening in that community that's affecting these older people, and you need to make that a part of your agenda. And so that's number one. Number two, I would say, sometimes older people, they look at young people running for office and they think that they don't have the experience, and you need to, either you have some experience that you need to translate to them in a way that appeals to them. And I don't know what that is. I would need to know more about, who the situation or what have you. But this is what I will say about another thing I would like to mention. As I mentioned before, I know several people who ran for office when they were young and were viewed as such, and they lost. But they won the next time around. It's like an interview, you know. You could look at it that way as well, you know. People don't know who you are, and then all of a sudden you're running for office and people get to know who you are, and they get to know the things that you're doing, and they get to know the things you've done in the past, the things that you're doing now. People who come to mind, a good friend of mine, the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, Raz Baraka, a very powerful brother I met, grew up with, he ran for mayor when he was in his mid-20s, right out of college almost, and now he's the mayor of Newark. And he was too young then, and then he lost a couple of city council seats, runs or what have you, but eventually became a city councilman. Now he's mayor, and one of the more progressive mayors around this country. If you ever listen to the Lauryn Hill album, he's the guy narrating, Miseducation Lauryn Hill is the guy narrating the whole album. He's a school teacher and principal in Newark, prior to being mayor. If you think locally, Keon Hardeman, Keon Hardeman, are now Miami-Dade County Commissioner, the former head of the Overtown CRA. I remember when Keon was running for city. He ran for county commissioner, the same city he just won years ago. I think he had been practicing law a few years in the public defender's office. He, of course, he went to FAM with the UN law, was at the public defender's office. He ran for county commissioner, lost. A couple of years later, ran for city of Miami commissioner, won because, re-election. Now he's a county commissioner. And the same thing, I remember, I've known Keon since he was in college. And at the time when he was running for city commissioner, I was managing a campaign, somebody running for state attorney. So I was always encouraging him, you know what I mean? Being realistic, but encouraging him. And he eventually won. So, you can look at a campaign as an opportunity. What's winning? I worked on a campaign for a state senator a few years ago, 2016. And we lost in 2016, but we knew it was a redistricting year. So we knew that that the election, that there would be another election for the same office in 2 years rather than 4. And we did so well in 2016, and winning to us was, okay, well, if we don't win, we're going to definitely win in 2018. You know what I mean? And so I think these things, sometimes it takes a long-term plan if you're young. And that's not, I'm saying that not to discourage, but it's just the reality of it.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to read this comment, then I'm going to go back to probably our last questions because we are at about 10:55. But thank you, Shalonda Warren. She dropped in the chat. Florida Institute for Political Leadership offers free campaign preparatory training for people interested in running for office. And she's also shared the website there as well. So thank you, Shalonda Warren. And then there was a previous comment, Alex Enriquez, how would someone obtain the voter list? Are they public record?
Yes, you just go to Dade County Supervisor of Elections.
Is there a fee for that?
I think the fee is like the printing of the paper. It's not like a real fee. You know what I mean? I think it's just the printing of the paper, and you can get it on a disc. Oh, I don't know if they still. I'm so old school. I think you can get it on a thumb drive or whatever as well. I believe, but they have it. They'll give it to you in some format. The cost may change depending upon the format.
And I will say that I did, my consultant, I'm working with a consultant. I do have all of the voting information for individuals in the 3 precincts in my area. And that is really what has allowed me to see who's voting, where they live, what their affiliation is. All that information is included, and you know who you're speaking to. And oftentimes people are more receptive when you address them as their first name. And you're also able to see how many individuals in the household are registered voters. And so I'm always encouraging, when I see 3 or 4, I'm always asking, well, will every registered voter in the home be voting on March the 9th? I ask that question 100% because we want to make certain that we get every single vote in the house.
Absolutely. Those households are gold mines as well from a strategic point of view, because as I said before, I like to focus on the 3s and 4s, obviously, but if I have 3s and 4s that also have a registered voter in it, that may be a 1 or 2, or if I have, a household that has like 4 2-rated voters, okay, I might shoot something to, I'll spend time and energy on that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And they are asking if you can send your presentation to Cornell. They would love to have it as well.
Oh, no problem. I'll be happy to. I'll send a link to them. Oh, I could actually put the link in the chat, I think.
In the chat?
Yeah.
Awesome. Are there any parting nuggets that you would like to leave the participants of this session? I mean, you covered a whole lot of ground from having a plan. I think the plan to me was the most important thing. You have to know where you're going and when you're going to get there. And the money part, how significant that is, it plays a major role in terms of the activities that you do.
Yeah, I think I got involved in working on campaigns because I wanted good people who I thought should be elected to know there's somebody out there that knows the rubrics of how to get elected. So often, just like in the avenues that most of the participants are working on issues, having problems with access to capital or having problems with access to good paying jobs. There's people, in our midst that, have access to even knowing how to run for office, or they've been around people who know how to run for office, or things of that nature. So I always wanted to be a resource for good people who I thought that should run for office, but may not run for office because they think it's something dirty about it, or they think that they have to, they don't want to go through this process. And so I want to be able to say to them, hey, this is what you got to do. My family in Red Bank, New Jersey owned a beauty parlor for 50 years. Her name is Alice Ankrum, and she's a community stalwart there. And one of the things I always noticed, she would say, hey, you can come in here and I know how to fix your hair, but I can't get you a husband. So I want to be able to fix people's hair. I know what needs to happen. You got to sit still though, because I can't do this if you don't sit still. I can't guarantee what happens afterwards, but these are the things that you have to do. I've talked myself out of more clients than I've gotten because I've tried to be as transparent as possible about what needs to happen. Whether you do it yourself, whether you hire somebody, or whether you hire me, these are the things that has to be done. And if you're not willing to do it, I don't really want to work with you.
That's great advice, Chris. I think they're getting ready to move us to the next room. They're saying wrap up in two minutes, but I love that example that you gave. Yeah, you got to be still though. Got to be still. Mm-hmm. Well, this has been a power-packed information session. I definitely enjoyed it. A lot of nuggets. I took copious notes. So thank you so much for sharing with us the benefit of your knowledge and experience. And I'm certain that everyone had a lot of great takeaways. So thank you again, Chris Norwood.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.